The morning in Eldridge dawned earlier than usual. The soft April sunlight painted the blooming cherry blossoms in the church garden with a delicate pink hue. Elena Castillo was about to make the most important vow of her life. Elena, a pediatrician at the City Children's Hospital, was a woman who hid great strength behind her gentle smile. Her lifestyle based on honesty and commitment had earned her the trust of her colleagues. On her days off, nothing made her happier than capturing the smiles of hospitalized children with her camera. Her annual salary of $50,000 reflected her talent and dedication. Her fiancé Mateo Rivera was the branch manager at a regional technology company. The son of Chinese immigrants who had worked tirelessly to support him, Mateo valued family bonds above everything. Despite his impressive annual salary of $100,000, his humility and affable nature had earned him the trust of those around him. The couple had met at a charity event organized by the hospital. The Castillo family was very well known in the social circles of Eldridge. Almost everyone had heard of them. Her father, Don Javier Castillo, was the president of Castillo Properties, a real estate company with annual sales of $20 million. However, lately he had become more interested in golf than in business and was obsessed with social media. His personality, centered on appearances and ostentation, was well known in the business world. Her mother, Lucia, had once been a pillar of local society as a full-time housewife, but over time she had shifted her interests to social media. Now she dedicated herself to her role as an influencer on Instagram, where she had 20,000 followers. Her spa visits 3 times a week had become an essential part of her routine. Her obsession with likes was a source of concern for Elena. Valeria, her sister, had obtained the position of financial director in her father's company through nepotism. However, she seemed more interested in managing her social media than in her work responsibilities. As an influencer with 100,000 followers, she spent practically her entire monthly salary of $11,000 on maintaining her image, an aspect crucial within the Castillo family. Isabella Harrington had become a key figure as the owner of the largest shopping center in the region. Harrington Mall was the most important property for Castillo Properties, one of their most valuable clients, with annual transactions of $10 million and a net worth of $500 million. She always carried herself with dignity and elegance and was recognized as a leader in local charitable causes. At the Children's Hospital where Elena worked, she was especially respected for her generous donations. But most importantly, she had watched Elena grow up since childhood, as she was a close friend of the family. 50 people had been invited from the father's side, led by the grandparents, who were respected figures in the community. There would also be 5 groups of aunts and uncles plus 8 cousins, all firm believers in family tradition. On the mother's side, her grandmother led 3 groups of uncles and aunts with a more liberal mindset, along with 6 cousins. In addition, influential local personalities, Mr. and Mrs. Harrington, 2 medical colleagues from the hospital, 3 groups of business partners and executives, 3 families of childhood friends, as well as the church pastor and his wife were also on the guest list. Just from this list, it was clear the high social status of the Castillo family. The wedding budget was $1 million and formal attire had been specified for all attendees. Everything was planned perfectly for this special day. Everyone was looking forward to this spring wedding with the cherry blossoms in full bloom at St. Mary's Chapel. Elena sat in front of a large mirror, completely still. Her pure white wedding dress elegantly highlighted her silhouette. Maria, the professional makeup artist, carefully applied the final touches, while Linda, her lifelong friend, gently adjusted the lace veil. From time to time she glanced outside. The morning sun illuminated the blooming cherry blossoms in the church garden, creating a scene worthy of a painting. The petals danced with the breeze, adding a dreamlike touch to the moment. However, there were still no signs of Lucia or the rest of the family. Linda, with a slight tone of unease in her voice, commented, "Lucia should have arrived by now. She told me she would come early for photos for her posts. Last night her mother had sent a message saying to take beautiful photos at the first light of morning, but now not a single word, no message, no call. It was strange." Elena looked anxiously at her phone screen. There were no signs of her parents. Even Valeria's Instagram, which usually updated every 30 minutes, remained unchanged since the night before. Her stories, which normally changed every half hour, remained silent. "You're getting a little pale," Maria commented with concern. Her hands continued applying the makeup with precision, but lines of worry were visible on her face. She could see the bride's skin beginning to turn ashen. At that moment, Sarah, the wedding planner, entered the room with her checklist in hand. "I just did the final confirmation with the pastor," she announced, but then noticed the tension in the air. "Where is your family?" No one knew how to respond. The heavy silence filling the room grew even denser. Outside, the voices of arriving guests mixed with murmurs. I don't see anyone from the Castillos. How strange. The wind carried those whispers to the bridal room. Then Elena's phone rang. On the screen appeared the name, Mom. All eyes turned to Elena instantly. The air in the room seemed to freeze. Mom, are you almost at the church? What she heard on the other end was an unexpectedly cheerful voice. In the background came the sound of waves breaking on the shore and tropical music. Oh, Elena, I'm in Hawaii right now. For a moment Elena could not comprehend what she had just heard. It felt like a joke in very poor taste. Today is my wedding day, she continued. Her mother replied with a carefree laugh. Oh, was it today? We thought a vacation would be more fun. In the background came the mocking laughter of her sister. Mom, this beach chair is incredible. The sound of the waves made that laughter sound even more cruel. Elena's hands began to tremble. Her white dress vibrated slightly with the movement. A single tear rolled down her cheek, staining the makeup Maria had applied with such care. Are you joking, right? Her voice trembled, and even she herself did not know if it was from anger or sadness. Oh, sorry, her mother responded with lightness. These are Sophia's spring break. So we thought a family trip should be the priority. More laughter from her sister. This angle is perfect for Instagram. I'll send you photos later. The resort is beautiful. My followers will love it. The call ended. Elena's phone slipped from her hand and fell onto the carpet with a dull thud. That sound echoed powerfully in her chest. Linda, Maria and Sarah remained motionless, staring at her in complete silence. How had everything come to this point? Time advanced relentlessly under the soft morning light. Suddenly 3 short firm knocks sounded on the door. It was as if destiny itself was calling. Excuse me, Elena. Behind the slightly open door, standing with unbreakable dignity, was Isabella Harrington. She held an iPad in her hands and her expression showed a determination never seen before. Mrs. Harrington, why? Elena's voice trembled slightly. It was not fear but the anticipation of something important about to happen. I saw it on social media, said Isabella. Elena lowered her gaze to the iPad screen. There were the smiles of the Castillo family, carefree and radiant, posing on a Hawaiian beach. They laughed as if nothing in the world mattered, as if they had not stood up their own daughter on the most important day of her life. Isabella raised her eyes. Her voice mixed contained calm with deep tenderness. 20 years of friendship. I have always taken care of you. In her eyes there was something more than simple empathy. It was certainty, the assurance that only years and experience bring. Today allow me to take the place of your family. Elena could no longer hold back her tears. But this time they were not of sadness. They were warm, the kind of tears shed only when true love touches the heart. Let's post something right now. Isabella's voice held serene firmness, the determination of someone about to launch a counterattack. Post? What do you mean? Isabella gave a slight smile. Yes, on your social media. But first let's take a beautiful photo. Isabella gently took Elena's hand. Her warmth was comforting, as if with that gesture she tried to fill the void her family had left. Together they walked to the center of the church and stopped in front of the colorful stained glass windows. The morning sun filtered through the stained glass, enveloping them in multicolored light. The vibrant tones seemed like a blessing from heaven. Let's build new bonds, said Isabella with a firm voice. And in that instant the church bells began to ring. Their peal spread throughout Eldridge as if announcing the beginning of a new story, as if this day was destined to be something special. Elena stood in silence and wiped her tears. That morning, for the first time, she began to understand the true meaning of love and family. The guests began arriving at St. Mary's Chapel one after another. The spring sun illuminated the church tower, and the stained glass projected colorful patterns on the stone floor, endowing the atmosphere with an almost magical light. The first to arrive was Elena's paternal grandfather. His face, marked by deep wrinkles, reflected the dignity of years lived. His carefully trimmed white beard gave him an even more imposing air as he entered with firm steps, adjusting the collar of his morning coat. Isabella Harrington approached him and quietly explained what had happened. The old man remained silent for a moment. What have they done? His voice trembled, but it was unclear if from anger or sadness. His gaze reflected complex emotions. He had protected the honor of the Castillo family for decades. This was unforgivable. This cannot be forgiven. His words carried the weight of 80 years of experience and dignity. His hand gripped the cane tightly, and the sharp tap against the old wooden floor resonated with contained fury. The next to arrive was her maternal aunt. Her face was even paler than Elena's. She could not find words to describe what she felt at the betrayal by her own sister. With teary eyes, she simply took Elena's hand and squeezed it tightly. No words were needed. The warmth of that hand spoke of genuine family bonds, those that neither distance nor disappointment could break. How could they do something so cruel? Her voice, laden with sadness, reflected the pain of a betrayal she had never imagined. The relatives arrived one after another. Each time they learned what had happened, they first fell silent in disbelief, then indignation showed on their faces. The medical colleagues from the hospital, normally accustomed to maintaining composure in the face of life and death, forgot their professionalism for a moment. Fury was evident in their expressions. The executives and business partners, who always maintained impassive faces in negotiations, now showed a different severity. They understood the magnitude of what the Castillo family had done. The families of Elena's childhood friends did not need to say anything. They simply hugged her in silence. The warmth of those hugs said everything. The memories of a life together, the moments shared since childhood, now united them with even stronger bonds. In the church garden, the blooming cherry blossoms began to release their petals. The scene was so beautiful, so ethereal, it seemed taken from a dream. And yet what was happening was real. The time for the ceremony approached. The atmosphere in the ancient church became solemn, charged with emotions that needed no words to be felt in the air. The pastor approached in silence and with a serene voice offered words of blessing. His presence commanded respect. He had officiated many weddings in that church for more than 40 years. Your wedding today will be pleasing in the eyes of God because it is surrounded by the true love of all the people present here. Sometimes God tests us, but beyond those tests awaits a deeper love. Elena and Matteo stood in the center of the chapel. The light passing through the stained glass softly enveloped them as if heaven itself was blessing them. All the guests watched them with contained emotion. Their gazes reflected love and determination. The pastor's voice resonated powerfully in the church. The echo of his words seemed to shake the old beams of the temple and reached the deepest parts of the hearts of those present. Matteo took Elena's hand with firmness but tenderness. What they felt for each other was transmitted better through that simple gesture than with any words. Elena, his voice was filled with sincere affection, I promise before you that although we are not united by blood, we will become a new family, and together with all the people gathered here we will cultivate bonds that will last forever. There was a moment of profound silence. Today, in front of all who accompany us in this moment, we are going to write a new family story. Bright tears fell from Elena's eyes. But unlike that morning, these were not tears of sadness. They were tears of happiness. The small drops rolled down her cheeks and lightly stained her wedding dress, shining like witnesses of a new hope. After the ceremony, the guests gathered at the reception venue. One could feel something different in the atmosphere, a deep union, a bond that went beyond blood. The expressions of the attendees had changed. They no longer only reflected anger and sadness but a renewed determination. Elena's paternal grandfather stood up slowly. The place fell into absolute silence. With a glass in his hand, his presence emanated dignity. It was like an imposing statue with the wisdom of years reflected in his bearing. Today I feel the deepest anger of my life and at the same time the most intense emotion, he said with a voice that defied his age. Each of his words contained the weight of a lifetime. Decades of business experience, the respect earned over the years, and the responsibility of being the patriarch of the Castillo family were present in every syllable. The parents and sister of my granddaughter did not come to her wedding. This can never be forgiven. He made a pause. In the history of the Castillo family there has never been a misfortune like this. The silence that followed was overwhelming. The air was dense, heavy, but at the same time powerful. However, the old man looked around, observed the faces of those present, sighed deeply, and with absolute conviction added, "But upon witnessing the love of all those gathered here today, I am convinced of something. True family is not only about blood. This kind of care and mutual support is the true test of what it means to be family." Isabella Harrington stood up in silence. Her presence commanded respect. It was the perfect combination of the dignity of a successful businesswoman and the maternal affection of a mother. "I have a proposal for everyone," she said firmly. The atmosphere in the hall became even more tense. All eyes turned to her. "Now we are united by new bonds. What do you think if we give shape to those bonds in the place they value most, social media?" Elena's maternal aunt stood up, wiping her tears. Her hands were still trembling. "Surely there is something we can all do together," she murmured. "Let's transform our anger and sadness toward my sister into love for our new family." One by one the guests began to share opinions. But these were not simple expressions of anger or disappointment. They were constructive proposals full of determination and will. Naturally, the conversation led them to form a large circle. 50 people joined hands. The circle was perfect, as if symbolizing the new family bonds that were being born. "Let's unite our strength as the new family we are," said Isabella with a firm voice. Her words were imbued with emotion. One could feel the hope of a new story about to be written. Matteo squeezed Elena's hand tightly. Through that silent grip he transmitted everything he felt. All who came to our wedding today are our true family, he said with conviction. We want to start our new life alongside you who chose the bonds of the heart over the bonds of blood. All the guests nodded and holding hands made a silent vow. Just then the church bells began to ring. It was a pure sound as if blessing the birth of these new bonds. The peal of the bells resonated throughout Eldridge as if announcing that this was a special day. Isabella took out her smartphone without saying a word. Her expression was serene but determination was noticeable in her eyes. The counterattack was about to begin. In a matter of seconds, Elena's post was launched into the world of social media. A single photo taken in front of the church-stained glass with the spring sunlight illuminating her from behind. Elena in her wedding dress standing beside Isabella Harrington radiating dignity. Their expressions conveyed deep affection and impenetrable calm. Below the image, Elena's message began to unfold. I want to introduce you to today's special guest, Mrs. Isabella Harrington, owner of Harrington Mall. She has been a friend of the family for 20 years and has always looked out for me since I was a child. The post appeared in real time on the reception screen. The guests read it with great anticipation. Elena took a breath and wrote the next line. This morning I received a call from my mother telling me she would not come to my wedding. On the day of my wedding, my entire family cancelled the most important day of my life because Hawaii seemed more fun to them. Small laughs escaped among those present, but they were not of mockery or sadness. They seemed to anticipate what was about to happen. In the midst of everything, Mrs. Harrington ran to me and said firmly, "We cannot let your new life begin this way." Mrs. Harrington, who supports me with more warmth than my own family while my father, my mother and my sister chose a vacation in Hawaii, she is teaching me what it means to be a true adult. Within minutes of the message, reactions began flooding the network. First came responses from the local community, then comments from the business world. More voices from different social circles rose and spread across all networks. An emergency meeting was held at the reception venue. Let's decide how to proceed from here, said Isabella Harrington with a firm voice. The economic impact is inevitable, commented one of the executive business partners seriously. The stock price of Castillo Properties is already falling drastically. The market seems to be questioning Don Javier Castillo's management ability. An uncle who was a lawyer spoke quietly. From a legal point of view, there are several options. First, damages for breach of the wedding contract, then the possibility of a lawsuit from shareholders for damage to the company's reputation. But Elena shook her head. This is not about money. All I wanted was the love of my family. The place fell into complete silence. Her grandfather stood up slowly. His presence carried the weight of history and Castillo tradition. This is the right decision, he said with solemnity. For the honor and pride of our family. Everyone nodded in silence. Then they took one last photo together. The guests formed a large circle around the bride and groom. There were no longer doubts on their faces. The bonds of this new family were now stronger than ever. And that union was clearly captured in the image. At the photographer's signal, the shutter clicked. Just then the church bells rang loudly. The photo was published. It was a solemn declaration signed by 50 names. Today we, the extended family, declare the complete break of ties with Don Javier Castillo, Lucia Castillo and Valeria Castillo, who have trampled family bonds and broken the most important promise. From this moment, the relations between the Castillo and Rivera families are officially terminated. The instant the post was completed, the spring sunset illuminated the church-stained glass. The colored lights spread throughout the place as if blessing the birth of this new family. Elena squeezed Mateo's hand tightly. No more tears flowed in her eyes. There was no longer sadness, only firmness for the life about to begin. Outside the window, the cherry blossom petals danced under the golden light of the sunset, as if bidding farewell to the old bonds and celebrating the birth of new ones. The afternoon fell quietly over Eldridge. However, the news continued spreading like a stone thrown into water. Its impact generated waves that reached both the digital and real world. 1 year later, Eldridge received another spring. The blooming cherry blossoms in the garden of St. Mary's Chapel flowered with the same beauty as the previous year, but many things had changed in that time. The wedding incident had gone viral across the United States. Social media spread it on a large scale and major media outlets covered it widely. It became a social phenomenon. They called it the fall of a family addicted to social media and pointed to it as a warning for modern society. The fall of the Castillos was rapid, too rapid. Don Javier Castillo lost his contract with Harrington Mall immediately. That meant losing $10 million in annual transactions. Shortly after, other business partners began breaking their contracts too. We cannot trust a man who is not even capable of keeping his family together. That phrase became an unspoken rule in the business world. Months later, the shares of Castillo Properties fell to their lowest point since the company's founding. Pursued by shareholders for poor management, Don Javier Castillo had no choice but to resign as president. Today he only runs a small real estate business. The decline of Lucia Castillo was even more abrupt. The post she made on the wedding day caused a storm on Instagram. She was harshly criticized by her followers. Within hours her account was suspended. Expelled from the social circles in which she had moved all her life, her world collapsed in an instant. The relationships she had built over years disappeared. Without her social circle, without the company money, she could no longer afford her spa treatments 3 times a week. Now she sighs every time she looks in the mirror. Diagnosed with depression, she spends her days locked at home. Valeria Castillo, her sister, fared no better. She had to abandon her influencer career. The label of influencer who betrayed her family was lethal in the world of social media. In 1 week she lost almost all her followers. The brands that sponsored her broke their contracts, and without her financial director position in her father's company, she had no choice but to look for another job. Now she works part-time in a small cafe. Ironically, she ended up in the type of job she had always despised. But while some bonds broke, others grew stronger. Last month Elena and Mateo announced they were expecting their first baby. The post received more than 100,000 likes and was filled with congratulatory comments. Of course, Isabella Harrington proudly accepted her role as godmother. "I have received the best role of my life." Her words were full of emotion. Genuine affection enveloped Elena's life. Her career at the hospital had become more rewarding than ever. Her love for child photography had given rise to a special section on the hospital's social media called Today's Smile. Each image captured the joy of the little patients and moved thousands of people. Every Sunday the entire new family gathered for dinner. It had become a beautiful tradition to share a warm moment in Isabella Harrington's mansion. "We have become a true family beyond blood ties." Every time the grandfather pronounced these words at dinner, everyone felt moved. Each month they took new family photos. But these were not for social media. They were only for themselves, to preserve the most precious memories. The smiles in those photos reflected authentic happiness. Recently the 50 people who formed this great family gathered again at St. Mary's Chapel. It was the mass for the first wedding anniversary. The pastor, who had witnessed all the changes of the past year, offered special words of blessing. "True family is built with hearts that care for and support each other. You have shown us the most beautiful way to do it." Elena nodded in silence and placed a hand on her belly where a new life was growing. "I want to teach this child what a true family means." Mateo wrapped her in an embrace while around them spread the warm smiles of their new family. Sometimes the story of their wedding still appeared on social media, but it was no longer spoken of with sadness. It had become a testimony of love and strength, a silent but powerful lesson, a reminder that true family is not always the one by blood, but the one chosen with the heart. In the church garden, the spring breeze lifted the cherry blossom petals. The scene was as beautiful as the year before, but its meaning had changed. Now it seemed to be blessing the bonds of the new family. Thank you for listening to today's story. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to support the channel. See you in the next story.